Okay, hi guys, my name is Kaylin Maddox. Today I'm going to be talking about a kind of hard and touchy subject. In 2017, there were 50,000 recorded suicides, according to the National Center of Health. The annual U.S. suicide rate has increased 24% between 1991 and 2014. From 10 to 14 suicides per 100,000 people, this is the highest rate recorded in 28 years. What exactly is the problem? I'd say one of the problems is actually the language. The phrase alone, blank committed suicide, suggests an almost criminal intent. Did you know in the early 1920s, attempted suicide used to carry the same jail sentence as attempted murder? Let that sink in for a second. Attempting suicide actually was decriminalized because it was confirmed a public health concern, not a criminal one. The verb commit is generally seen as a sin. Don't get me wrong, suicide is a horrible thing, but a person who dies by suicide is not committing a crime. To portray suicide as a crime can stigmatize those who experience suicidal thoughts or those who have attempted. This stigma can turn people away from seeking the help they need. If changing our language can help someone who is struggling with mental health, choosing our words carefully can help make someone feel safer when asking for help. Choosing our words more carefully avoids the judgmental conversations of committing suicide. Quoted Mark Hennick from his TED Talk, Why We Choose Suicide, he said one way we can help make a change is by changing the way we think. And that is what changes the world. Thank you. Anyone has questions, that might make this a little longer.
How does the language connect to changing the way that we think?
So the language, so a lot of people, when someone takes their life, a common phrase that is used is so-and-so committed suicide, or someone who tried to take their own life. They'll tell someone, and they'll say, oh, so you tried to commit suicide. That word commit can be a trigger because in society you can hear things, so-and-so committed a crime by murdering someone, so-and-so committed a crime by stealing something. The word commit is kind of a toxic and bad word. And to families and friends that have lost someone to suicide, I've lost 3 people to suicide, that's offensive because they're struggling, they weren't doing something wrong. It wasn't a right choice to make, but it wasn't something that was like hurting someone else, like someone murdering someone, I guess. So using that word commit, if you tried to attempt suicide and you go and someone says, oh, you tried to commit suicide, that can turn people away and that can push away people from trying to get the help they need.
Did you get the opportunity to look up the definition of suicide?
The definition of suicide is someone who takes their own life. And that can go through any ways. That can go through hanging themselves, that can go through intoxicating themselves, that can go through anything, overdosing. Is there another term you heard? I'm curious.
No, suicidal, so it's the same word that I've heard a lot.
So I kind of feel like society kind of has to like do something with it because as guys, we're told you can't cry, like
Yeah.
you gotta man up. So sometimes when like the guy has a problem, he has to be that tough guy. He can't.
So it is not in my speech, but there is more recorded male suicides than female.
Yeah, that's right.
And I do truly believe it is because suicide puts that on you, that guys have to be the strong ones, they have to be the tough ones, guys don't cry, guys work hard, guys are muscular, and it's very messed up. Guys should be allowed to cry. I think it's manly to cry, it's human to cry.
Yeah, honestly, I don't that has taken effect on me because I don't like opening up,
Yeah.
I used to feel vulnerable.
Yeah, and I have a lot of friends, I've met a lot of people who suffer from stuff like that because society and their parents and people put that on them saying, oh, you're not allowed to cry, oh, you need to be the one that's strong and let the other people cry and let the other people feel. I'll get you next.
Ladies first.
So my best guy friend, he grew up with five other guys, and they were like brothers to him. And in the course of the last 6 years, my best guy friend is the only one left. They've all taken their own lives,
I'm sorry to
and
hear
for
that.
different reasons, whether it was drugs and alcohol, or there was one that was depression. But I can tell you that when I talked to, I had 2 boys that I'm raising. And we discussed what happened because I was going to funerals and dealing with all that. And I was really clear with them, and I didn't say commit suicide. I did say take your own life. And then, of course, I got questions. I've got 2 little kids. Well, not one, not so little, but the questions. But I encourage my children every single day. Like, don't get me wrong. I have actually said to my children to man up. However, when it comes to emotions and things like that, I'm like, you can talk to me all the time, you can tell me how you feel, you can always come to me. Even my son, I'm like, you're gonna go to a party at some point, you're gonna get drunk at some point, you can always call me. Don't be afraid that you're gonna get in trouble. Even if you get in trouble later, I'd rather you call me and let me come get you rather than, go out and hurt yourself. So I don't know if it's as a mother when certain things changed in my language, or if I've always just kind of been in tune with that. But I think that education is definitely the way to help people change that kind of school of thought. Because a lot of people look at it as a stigma too, like they don't sit there and see the pain and the suffering that that person was in. It's automatically like you did a bad thing. And so they're not remembered kindly, they're not remembered, it's, there's a stigma that's there. Which is why people don't talk about it, and it's just crap.
That's one of the biggest problems, is it's not talked about anywhere. In my school, when I was in high school, going through those 3 suicides, the school never did anything about it. They brought in counselors. I remember they had an assembly the day after my friend took his life, and they talked about basketball and volleyball. And I was like, you're not going to talk about which has happened? All these people are affected. You're not going to talk about anything. And people not talking about it, when you don't talk about something, people go 2 directions because they don't understand it. They either make fun of it because they don't understand it, or they ignore it, and that's horrible because I think everyone at some point kind of goes through, like, they're at their lowest and they're probably not feeling great about themselves, and if you're making fun of it or you're ignoring it, that's not helping you rise above. Can I ask you and Robbie a question? Don't take offense, but when you guys were in high school, was depression a big thing that people talked about? Anxiety and depression? Was that something?
No.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
anyone-
so too. What the hell?
Sorry. Him too. Well, that's the thing. And when you brought up depression or anxiety, if you did, was it kind of uncomfortable?
So when I was in high school, I had a girlfriend who attempted suicide.
Sorry.
And it was maybe my junior and senior year. She was one of my best friends. We were really, really close. And that was the thing that kind of drove us apart. Like, as I've grown up now, 20 years later, I felt guilt, right? But at the time, I didn't know how to I didn't know how to go into that. There was something happening that nobody had taught us how to talk about, how to deal with, or how to approach. She was put in the hospital for a week. And I was like, can I go visit? I don't know. Can I talk to her? Can we talk about what happened? We have this real fear, I think, that if we mention the word suicide, people will be like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Thanks, great idea. Which is the opposite of the reality, right?
Yeah.
We've had training here when we talk to students who are going through crisis. Our society tells us not to ask, are you considering suicide?
Nope.
Because we're afraid that somebody will be like, no, but now I am. But the reality is, you can ask about that and people will answer you honestly.
Also, when I was in high school back in the day, bullying was tolerated. It was a big thing back then. Even the shows that we used to watch in high school, I watch them nowadays, like Saved by the Bell or something like that. That guy Zach was a bully. He called people dweebs and nerds, and he was a sexist. And there was also a lot of racism, and that was just a show that we would watch back in the day, and we didn't think anything of it.
Yep.
But now we're looking at it like, wow, this probably could have caused a lot of the bullying and mass shootings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some TV shows I used to watch when I was younger. I looked back on now, and there's there's bullying in there, there's suicides in there, there's like, I remember this one scene from SpongeBob where one of the characters goes and he like, it's Squidward. He goes and he puts a rope up over like the ceiling or something and he ties a noose. And he stands up on a chair and he goes, maybe this will make me feel better. And then he like pulls it up and it's like a bird cage. But it was like,
Wow.
Yeah.
that's just, watching that as a kid, like you having a kid, if your kid's watching that, that's putting that in your kid's head. That's
It's a
terrifying.
way out. Yeah.
And that's it's all over the internet, it's on YouTube, it's like, it's everywhere, and it's kind of like, I feel like it's brainwashing kids, and then, you know, you get older, and that's kind of what you know.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, maybe that's how I handle things.
Yeah.
So for me, when I was in high school, and so I got pregnant, like super young, and my parents and I made a decision to end that pregnancy. And I went through like a really dark time, and I did attempt suicide. But instead of even my family or my classmates or my friends, so as a cheerleader, I had friends all over, I was ostracized for not only terminating the pregnancy, but more actually, it was more like, oh, she's just trying to get attention and whatnot, and it was really hard. But now, I talk to my kids about it, I think you heard me talking, and my son has anxiety. We talk about this stuff all the time. I'm like, you know, whenever you're feeling a certain way, I don't want you to get to a point where you feel like you don't want to live, because he's had issues like that. Not a lot, but 2 was enough for me as his mom. So we talk about it all the time, and I think it just goes right back to what we were saying, like, the culture of when we grew up, it was, you know, shove it under the corner, make fun of it, point fingers, ostracize, all of those things. I think it is much more prevalent in today's society, because even when they do touch on suicide in TV shows, there's immediately suicide prevention law. There's after the episode, they're talking about it. You get the stars of the cast that are standing there going, if you or anybody you know is hurt, you know, or feeling this way, please, you know. So I think nowadays it's much more, people are talking about it a lot more.
Yep,
Now,
yep.
it might not be as fast as some people want it, but it's night and day from when I was growing up.
I feel like,
Sorry, go ahead.
like, nothing has really changed. Because if you look at it, like in school, like, you get bullied. Nope, there's no consequences
No,
for what
there's not.
somebody said or did to you.
And that's true.
And like, it's kind of like, okay, like, we're gonna have a conversation, it's like a slap on the wrist, and that's all it is. And then when something happens, again, even now, they still push it under the
Ignore it.
rug.
Well, I think some schools are definitely like that. My son recently learned in high school, there was a boy he was acquaintance with, and he kept saying, I'm gonna rape you, to my son. So finally, my son happened to just kind of mention it to a teacher, and they sent him to the dean of students, and they did a full complaint, Title IX and everything. And it was the first time in his life, in education, that somebody other than his mother basically did something about it. Something happened to him in school, and the school tried to hide it. And I was an employee there. The only reason I knew about it is, you know, that he went through 7 months of not wanting to go to school
Yeah.
in therapy.
It's horrible.
He's 9 years old. So yeah, schools don't do very much.
Yeah.
I feel like people don't see mental health as like a real thing.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of ignored. Like, you know, someone might say they're depressed, and I'm just like, you know, go do something that'll make you happy.
Yeah.
But like sometimes depression gets so hard that like you don't even want to get out of bed. You know,
Yeah.
some people just like completely ignore you, and that, you know, you feel all alone. I feel that sometimes like that's where it leads to suicide. And I feel like if mental health and things like that were taken more seriously, people would be like more open to get help.
I agree. They're not taking it seriously, and they're hiding it and pushing it under the rug, and when they do talk about it, they tiptoe around it. They don't actually just go for it and talk about it. They're just like, okay, so there's this, and that's it. And they're very like hush-hush about it.
Talk.
And that, sitting in an audience and having someone acting like that and being very hush-hush about it, makes me uncomfortable. And if I'm uncomfortable, I'm not going to go and reach out to you and say, I'm not feeling safe, my mental health is not in a good spot. And that's one of the biggest problems right now, is it's not being talked about. Because people don't understand it and they're scared to approach it in some instances. And yeah, it's just not good. And I think we should be approaching it. We should make people understand it, because if people understand it, we can help other people and we can help our friends, and we can feel comfortable to say, hey, are you doing okay? I can tell that, you know, you've not been yourself lately, and people will start reaching out to others more.